And I'm building these intention statements for the new moon that are corresponding to this overarching theme and intentions for the full year. Now we're really working with the cycles of energy, right? These are things that I'm already doing, right? I'm already doing the annual year in review and creation of the year ahead. I'm already doing these new moon intentions. So I could just tie them together, right? So it's not like a whole new thing that I'm doing. It's just an integration of two things that I'm already doing. Welcome to the Brave Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Lynn, founder of Sistership Circle and author of Open Your Heart and The Art of Leading Circle. I'm the mother of 2 girls, an 8 on the Enneagram, aka the Challenger, happily married to my business partner, Brent, love connecting with nature, and have put in well over 10,000 hours circling with other women. On this podcast, we will explore how to embody the brave woman so that you can take action on your dreams and desires, unapologetically speak your truth, and live life on your own terms. Grab a seat and a cup of tea, and let's get started. Well, this episode is a week late, and that's okay because that's what happens during the holiday season is, we just want to relax and we get caught up with family. And so the intention of this episode was to wrap up 2022 and take you through my process of completing the year. And I just feel like this is so important for us to reflect, take that time to really glean all the gold from the year before we step into the new year. And here's what's really been coming through is this calendar, the Gregorian calendar, is kind of man-made, right? And so it's okay if you haven't jumped into New Year's resolutions or creating your new goals and intentions, and you're running a little late the way that I am, right? Like I'm a week behind in my process here. And that's okay, because if we're actually tuning into the natural rhythm and cycles of the earth, which is a feminine-based practice, that allows us really to move and flow with the energy, then, the Chinese New Year doesn't start for a couple more weeks. And that is a little bit more in tune and aligned with the natural start of the new year, right? And we could even say that it's not until spring that the new year really starts. Like that's really the rebirth. So whatever really feels best for you, to really give yourself permission to take your time with your process of transitioning from one year to the next. And if there's one thing that I want you to take away with you from this episode, is that you are in charge of your schedule. You are in charge of creating your life by design, right? And if you feel like taking January off, great, do that, right? In terms of, and that might look different for everyone. That might mean actually taking a break from work and being more in what we call the cave of creation, which is an internal, like going within, digging deep and really allowing yourself that rest and that space to reflect and get clear on those desires. So whenever it makes sense for you to complete your year, and maybe you've already completed your year, this process you can incorporate into your typical process if you have one, or adopt in some way, right? It's about making it real for you. But this is a process that I have been doing for at least a decade at the end of every year. And I used to actually do it in November, early December. And now it's been a process that I do at the very end of the year. And in this case, after the new year has begun, according to the Gregorian calendar. So I want to share the process, and I also want to share my top lessons from 2022. And I posted this on Facebook and got a few responses of like, oh, I just want to take all these lessons for myself. Can I just copy you? Right. So I think that they're really amazing. And so hopefully they will inspire you in your own life. And like what I realize is this process of completing the year and the conscious completion of that, the reflection, the going through meticulously of what really happened in this past year sets me up to really look at what do I want to focus on in the year to come. And really, when spring comes, right? And that is a big insight that's come through in the past week is I've had to put a few things on pause until the spring. And if I think back to when summer was born in January, it was actually, end of 2017. Summer was about 4 or 5 months old. And I thought I was going to do our How to Lead Circle enrollment in January. And I was on the floor in my bathroom, SOS, called to sisters and called to my husband and called to my mom. And I put it on pause. And actually, I rescheduled it for March, which is now the time that has become when, so we've been doing since 2018. So 4 years, that has been the start of the program. Again, with like the rebirth. Like it didn't make sense to launch our number one program, our signature program in January. But it took me in that place of surrender on the floor to really get that lesson, right? So now it's like, try to remember it a little bit without getting my butt kicked and tossed around the way that I was actually a couple weeks ago. Yeah, how do I learn this lesson or remember it with a little bit more grace? So this process, essentially, what I do first is I go through my calendar and I look at all my appointments starting in January 2022. I literally go through day by day and I look at what happened. What was I doing? And I list out on a piece of paper the highlights of each month. What are the things that stand out? Now, why do I do this so meticulously? Number one is because we forget a lot of the finer details, which is really where a lot of the lessons lie, because we're on to the next thing, right? And by doing this, and I start to look at like, wow, look at how many appointments I had. And even to the point where I put into my calendar when I'm exercising and date nights. And I get to really look at what was happening for the year. So I'm going through month by month, and then I'm capturing the highlights and I'm putting them onto the page. And then that's reminding me of themes and some of the things that I was working on. And so I'm highlighting and coming up with, in this case, I came up with 10 different themes. And then I'm going back and I'm looking at the same piece of paper that I created to reflect on 2021, that's creating 2022. And I go back and I look and see what has changed from the year prior, what's the same, what are the themes here? And that process is really, really powerful in getting clear on what you want to focus on. And so one of the biggest things that I saw was nervous system. Like I was starting to plant that seed in 2021. And then in 2022, that's when I joined the Somatic Experiencing 3-year program, right? So it's like, oh, okay. So that's been a big theme for me over 2 years. Another thing that was kind of like one of the negatives or the shadows of 2021 was my reactions in my marriage and how I react. And that has been a theme again in 2022. So it's like, oh, okay. So why did things shift? I'm asking myself the question, did things shift? And if they didn't, or there hasn't been that much progress, why? And is that something now that I need to highlight as one of the main things that I need to work on? And what am I noticing of the difference between 21 and 22? One big thing for me was I had a morning spiritual practice happening in 21 that kind of got derailed in 22. And so reclaiming my mornings is a big highlight for 23, right? So looking at the full calendar, going back and comparing that to the year before, and this is where it becomes a ritual. If I go into, and I look up in my Google Docs year in review, I have a folder in there. And I have going back all the way to 2016. This is an annual ritual. It's so cool to go back and to look at that I'm doing the exact same ritual every year, comparing notes. And what really came through too was I want to be looking at this on a quarterly basis. Like I do quarterly goal setting, want to put that into my calendar of actually going in and looking at this document and doing these check-in points. And the other thing that I'm also building in for the next year is I do intention setting for the new moons and releases for the full moons. These would be really great times for me to check in with that annual intention, to look at those annual desires and look at this sheet. So maybe it's actually on a monthly basis for the new moon that I'm looking. And I'm building these intention statements for the new moon that are corresponding to this overarching theme and intentions for the full year. Now we're really working with the cycles of energy, right? And then how can I overlay like seasons, but I don't want to get like too overly structured, or I don't want to be, what do I want to say? Like, I don't want to be overcomplicating it that I don't do it. But these are things that I'm already doing, right? I'm already doing the annual year in review and creation of the year ahead. I'm already doing these new moon intentions. So I could just tie them together, right? So it's not like a whole new thing that I'm doing. It's just an integration of two things that I'm already doing. So I'm going to pull this up and just share some of my lessons for the year. And let's just actually look at what other pieces that I have in this. So I'm looking at every single month. One of the things I'm also doing is I'm doing a financial review of the year. And that's actually a separate process than this, but it's part of it. And I'm looking at how did all of my offerings do compared to each other. And then I'm setting goals. Comparing that, and I'm looking at each year related to the year before. So I'm looking at themes and lessons, which we're going to go into in just a second. And then I'm also going into the highlights. So I'm mapping and I'm putting all these bullets under each month, and then I'm really pulling out, and some of these things actually weren't even in the calendar, but I'm pulling out some of my highlights, and I'm pulling out my main shadows from the year. And that's the ritual. Super powerful. And then yesterday, so I was doing all of this yesterday, and I pop onto Facebook, and one of my friends is doing a tarot card spread. And she's named each of these 6 cards as last year and the year prior, or the year to come. And I said, ooh, this sounds fun. I don't have my tarot cards here in San Diego. They're in Costa Rica. And she texts me and she's like, do you want me to pull for you? And so she pulled my spread, and she took me through this beautiful ritual that she uses to really like feel the energy of the year that I'm creating, pull those cards, and then I use that as a foundation to start to map out my intentions for the year to come. And I'm not complete. And again, like, that's okay. I've got 5 words that I'm potentially going to work with as my theme word for the year. I've got a main affirmation, and then I've got some things that I like to actually put in the calendar, 2 books that I want to read this year, and yes, I'll be going deeper with that. And also, I have mapped in here both my husband and mine, so we also have a conversation and have our goals align and look at what we're both creating, and write that down so that we can actually be accountable for each other and just know what each other is intending within our, conscious marriage. Okay, so here we go. Number 1 thing that came up. So my word for 2022 was gentle grace. And gentle has been a word that I've been working with throughout the year. And I can see how that really has lended itself with the somatic work, with the nervous system regulation, that has been so integral this year. And I can see, here's a big lesson that I've learned. Whatever our intention is, we're going to get the opposite of that. We're going to be tested by the universe, and we're going to get all the lessons that we need to actually step into the embodiment of that. So, a lot of challenges this year that didn't feel so graceful. A lot of reactions this year that felt like, like I could work on my delivery or my level of responsibility, right? And also I can see so many beautiful glimpses of that gentle grace and how that revealed itself this year to me. So beautiful. Big piece. Number 1 lesson this year was around boundaries. This has been a huge theme in every single area of my life. Was something that we worked on during our second somatic experiencing weekend, and have been really, really tested in this area around setting loving and healthy boundaries. And really, for me, where I've struggled the most with boundaries is in holding them clearly without reacting. I did a horse healing at the beginning of the year, and that was something that I remembered as I was doing this ritual of going through, and it was in the calendar, right? I was like, oh my God, yes, my amazing horse healing with Chocolate, the horse that tests boundaries, and just working with him on setting a boundary with the horse. And like, what does it look like for me to set a firm boundary with him lovingly? That's not like this reaction or this anger, but holding that. And a big thing that came through is around boundary ruptures. And where I've had these leaks or these ruptures with my boundaries that then cause me to go into these reactive places. And there was one person in particular who triggered this so badly, and it felt like it was never going to end. And I had to lean into a lot of support to work through this and really get that this wasn't her. She was triggering that little girl who had the boundary ruptures and got to do this beautiful visualization of setting that boundary and holding it, and having the body actually like rearrange itself to feel what that feels like to actually like really set it super solid. And it kept coming up multiple times with this person, and I would feel myself contract and then like have to work with my nervous system to open up, right? And not freak out, and really get into like, I'm safe. I'm safe, because that's the piece around the boundary rupture, is where you weren't safe. But if I could actually train my nervous system and really work with my energetic field and lean into feeling safe, I could set that boundary. And so it feels like it just kept coming up over and over again, so that I can really feel that in the body. So my affirmation for this, what I'm stepping into, what I've been stepping into, is setting healthy boundaries is essential for my well-being. This is a big one too with my girls. If mommy doesn't have her time, she can't show up as a kind and loving mommy. And this is one big one for when I get back to Costa Rica, is reclaiming my mornings and what Sarah Jenks calls your sacred start. Reclaiming my sacred start and setting that loving boundary with my girls of mommy's not available till X time. Here's your clock so you know exactly what time it is. And I'm going to have to hold that boundary really hard, because they're going to come and test it. They're going to come knock on the door, right? Nope, mommy's not available until this time. How do I get them set up so that they're good to go? How do I hold that with love, without reaction? How do I enlist Brent as my gatekeeper in supporting this, so that I actually get to nourish myself first and then be of service and be that loving, kind mommy that they want, right? So it's like, what's in it for them? They don't get mean mommy. And then the second part is, when I set a boundary, it is essential that I stand firmly behind it. When mommy says you can't come in the room at this time, there's no exceptions. And that is where I've struggled, because I'm like, let's go with the flow. But then the boundary is completely ruptured there. And then they don't know. There's no boundary anymore, right? It's like, oh, well, sometimes mommy lets me in, so maybe this is one of those times when she'll let me in, but I'm going to be coming back every single time. Second one is around nervous system regulation. And the biggest piece that I learned about the nervous system this year is it's all around capacity. And as one of my mentors, Eva Clay, said, your capacity for pleasure is like this. How do we get it to like that, right? And that's not that much of a difference. It's like a pinpoint to like a bigger circle, but it's all actually connected to the nervous system. And so as I was working with Eva, that's what we were working on, is actually expanding my nervous system's capacity for more pleasure. It's not just trauma, although there might be trauma associated with pleasure, right? But it's like, how much goodness can we actually let in to our nervous system without our nervous system completely freaking out and being like, too much pleasure, right? Because it's dangerous. I might get in trouble. And then like shame and guilt and all those things come in. So it's the nervous system. So that was such a powerful piece for me to start to understand. And then it's like, okay, well, yeah, if I want to expand my capacity to step into 2 projects, Sistership Circle and De La Diosa, nervous system. It's all about the nervous system. So for me, I go from high energy, which is the sympathetic, stuck on to collapse all the time. That was my nervous system. On high, collapse. On high, collapse. So this is what I've been working on. And I did this beautiful circle at the end of the year where I said, I want to collapse, and I'm not going to collapse. And my sisters all witnessed as I held the frame of my body, the energetic frame of my body, and did not collapse. So that felt like a huge victory. So I am capable of self-regulation instead of collapsing. I expand my capacity through regulating my nervous system. I worked with, so as part of somatic experiencing, we need to have a certain amount of hours that we're working with a practitioner, and I chose this beautiful woman, and she became my go-to. And, you know, it's just beautiful to have someone to co-regulate with, but also to teach me how to like hold it within my own body versus trying to merge, because that's my thing. That's the collapse and the merging of like, you know, I feel everyone else's energy, and as an empath, like we feel everyone, right? No, like I'm holding here for me, right here. Yeah. I don't need to merge into you, and I don't need to collapse. And we could co-regulate, which is beautiful. The next one is around commitment. There was a point this summer when I had a practitioner appointment for me and Brent together, and he didn't come. He didn't show up. And I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done with this relationship. I'm done with this project. I'm done with Costa Rica. Like, I'm done. And that was a turning point. And there was a recommitment that we made. And one of the things that I'm working on actively is I'm all in, closing all my back doors. And I am not going to threaten to leave in my marriage, in De La Diosa. Like, I'm committed, totally committed. And I'm actually taking that completely out of my vocabulary. Now, this is a big one in relationship. And it's something that I learned from a relationship book. I forgot the name of it. And he said that is one of the biggest detriments to your sacred relationship is when you threaten to leave. When you question out loud, is this relationship for me? So, yeah, taking that out of my vocabulary, like I'm in. And it's so easy to go there when things are going rough and you're not happy and all those things. And Brent and I have had quite a year of just, really triggering each other and so much pressure and stress around this project and, all the things, co-parenting. And it's just like, oh, I don't know if I want this. Grass is greener on the other side if I didn't have a husband, right? Or for him, same thing. But it's like, no, like we chose each other. And actually him going to Burning Man was a big piece of him, like, wow, yeah. Like I see all that we built and all that we have together, and no, I'm in, right? And so that actually allowed me to fully step into the project in November and just be all in, because it's really been him doing all the things and getting water and getting electricity and building the team, and I've just been managing Sistership Circle. But no, it's like I'm here with you now, and it's been beautiful to come together. I am unwavering in my commitment to my vision and my marriage. I close all back doors and lean in. I am unavailable for doubt. And that's something I've learned from Elizabeth Purvis, who told me, you're simply unavailable for fear and doubt. Like, they're going to come, but you're not available. Like, you're not going to go down the rabbit hole and get all consumed with all the thoughts of doubt. And it's like, this is so hard, but it really can be that simple of, let me take all those thoughts of fear and doubt, put them on the cloud and blow the cloud away. That's something that I actually worked on with my practitioner, Sarit, is take all those and put them on the cloud and have that cloud go away. And it was really effective. I could actually visualize the fear and doubt leaving on a cloud to another dimension. The next, which really goes with so many of these other things, is around resources. And this feels like a big theme word for 2023. And just the theme throughout the whole year was we need resources. We need resources. And one of the things that I've distinguished inside of this conversation is the difference between internal and external resources. We have been really focused on building the external resources, the support system, the community, like all the ways in which we can have others supporting us, supporting our vision, right? But just as important is the internal resources. And this is something that I've learned from somatic experiencing, is resourcing yourself internally through feelings in the body, by working with the nervous system, by finding the points, the places in the body where you feel safest, you feel strongest, you feel most connected, most grounded. And for me, that has been a lot of focusing on the energy in my legs and in my feet and even in my heart center, and finding these internal resources of strength to move through challenging moments. And this has just been such a game-changing conversation for me this year, and that I'm going to continue to expand on in the year to come. And so the affirmation is, I am gentle with myself and nurture a supportive environment. And so it's like learning how to, instead of beat myself up, or, you know, I could be so hard on myself as someone who's really driven and ambitious, more of that gentleness. And again, back to the gentle grace and the way in which I'm resourcing myself, I'm self-soothing, the way in which just using a gentle hand on my heart and on my throat, or even on my own face, and like providing that motherly love and that motherly touch that perhaps I give to my kids to give back to myself, right? And finding how do we really nurture the environment around us, right? It's surrounding ourselves by people who are aligned with our vision, community, friends. So being really connected with support and really trusting that we are supported. The next one is all around up-leveling. And what I realized is that I've been comfortable the last few years with Sistership Circle, and that, you know, part of that is in moving into this new vision. Like, how do I take all my ambitions and all the things that, you know, I'm striving for with the growth of Sistership Circle and redirect that into De La Diosa? And it became clear to me, like, this difference between the comfort zone and creating this nourishing, nurturing environment, right? And so sometimes it's like, I want to be comfortable, like in my own home. That's different than hanging out playing safe in the comfort zone. And so making that distinction and seeing where, and also like with growth, it's like, where do I push and where do I expand my capacity with my nervous system? And so playing with those two energies, and again, like the sympathetic of being like totally on, right? And like that's that push out of the comfort zone into the growth zone. But no, how do I like work with that gently, and there's like this titration is the word, actually, the titration with my nervous system, and being able to work up to that. So I really saw in the second half of this year that it was time for an up level. And that place where I was playing small and being comfortable in like a safe zone, comfort zone with Sistership Circle needed to shift. And this really happened in November. And I went to my friend's event. And of course, what happens? I get sick and I'm throwing up with the flu or stomach bug the night before. And it was like, oh, got it. Okay. So something's coming up. Something's wanting to cleanse and purify and like purge out of my system to step into this next evolution of my leadership. And this is going to impact my leadership within Sistership Circle, but also it's very much linked to De La Diosa. And I got to see this piece that wants to come through. And stepping into not only the container of somatic experiencing, but also stepping into a year-long mastermind and coaching container to hold me accountable and support me in that next up level. And it was scary at first, but and I've kind of recalibrated and adjusted like expectations and just the wanting to push and like make things happen in December. It's like, no, what else needs to be released? What else needs to be purified? Coming into a place of surrender. And so I love this. I choose growth over comfort, and I'm actively relaxing my body as I lean into my edge. Actively relaxing the body, noticing where the body's getting tense, tight, constricted. And that's that like kind of aggressive pattern that I could go into to muscle through. No, I can be actively, like I can be in the growth. I could be pressing the edge of my expression and who I'm being, but it's more of a being conversation, and I can relax my body into that. And so there's this openness. And this has just been something really fun to play with. And it's like not to mistake creating the nourishment that feels really yummy and good in the body, but that's not comfort. There's a difference. And there's this piece around like rest has a different energetic than the comfort zone. So playing with that. Okay, I've got a few more. So consistency. I, over the last couple years, just like staying comfortable and, wanting to just be in the comfort zone with Sistership Circle, even though I've definitely played some edges, especially with our Rise into Leadership events. We did 2 of them, and the second one was huge and just, massive growth. But the consistency of showing up, and I used to consistently post about my journey on social media. And really, it's since I started having kids that I was like, like last on the thing to do. But what I noticed is when I started showing up more, just sharing my journey on social as Tanya, not as Sistership Circle, it shifted my energy, and it created like this new level of accountability and like expressing all parts of myself that just felt so liberating and so expansive. And that consistency feels so good. It feels like a structure to rely on. It feels like a grounding energy cord. And so it's not just in business. So looking at like showing up on social, not and more of the expression and sharing of the journey, my podcast, but also it's with 2 other pieces. That one is working out, which been completely consistent this year and has been helping my whole body just feel so much better. Spanish. And this is where I was showing up. I had a teacher. I was like really practicing, and then I just let it go. And that was my one regret from this year, was letting go of the consistency in that area and wishing I was a little further ahead with my speaking and noticing how much I've improved in my listening and comprehension of Spanish, but not in the speaking. And I like for that to change. Consistency is key to my success. I show up with all parts of me expressed. It's like, I want to be able to express myself in Spanish. And yeah, it's like, I just have to practice. That's it. Just practice. So it's like the practice is the consistency. It's the daily practice. Frequency. Frequency has been a big word. The frequency of prosperity has been something that I've been really leaning into this year. And the frequency of like, it doesn't have to be hard. And this is this gentle grace conversation. And seeing like whoever I'm being, the frequency in which I'm tuned into is what's showing up around me. There was a conversation that Brent and I had where, you know, over the summer when we were really in it, and this was the beginning of August, and you know, it was like there was a lot of stress and anxiety and pressure around the project, and especially for him. And I said, you know, if you show up like this at Burning Man, like your place, your sacred place, like how do you think your experience is going to go? And he was like, oh, it's going to be terrible, right? Like, who do you need to be at, whoever you're being at Burning Man, what if that was the frequency in which you were operating all the time, right? Like there's magic that's happening at Burning Man, right? And what if like you were bringing that to the project and eliminating like the stress and all the, like, you know, just the human part of like suffering that we bring to things. And that conversation wasn't just for him, it was also for me. The frequency in which I bring and where I'm operating at when I'm in circle, like bringing that into all areas of my life, right? And this year, I've noticed that I wasn't showing up in that way, right? And that wasn't the frequency that I was operating out in my house or in my marriage, right? And so it was like me really looking at how am I showing up in my marriage? Like what's the frequency that what I'm attuning to? Brent's just going to meet me there if that's how I'm showing up, right? So frequency, the frequency in which my energy is attuned to is directly aligned with what I call it. So truth and lies is the next one. And this is really related to the lies that I have told myself this year within my marriage, within sistership circle, like within my leadership, and you know, truth, and this goes with the next one, is human design. I did this deep dive, full like going down the rabbit hole with human design in November, like 2 days of just full immersion, looking at my gene keys, like looking intimately at, you know, just all aspects of human design and really seeing how I show up and ways in which I could adjust the way I show up in business, and my like life purpose, like my main gene key is all around truth. All around truth. That's always who I've been. Truth teller, truth seer. And I noticed some places where I've been lying to myself this year and not telling myself the truth and not showing up in like alignment with truth. And it was like starting to call myself out on those things. Starting to put on loudspeaker the little doubts in my head that I was trying to keep hidden. the places where I wasn't actually being vulnerable. And yeah, so that was huge. That was a big one. And then the last one is I found this distinction from Lisa Fabrega, who coaches CEOs in expanding their capacity and building their team and expanding their empire essentially. And she talked about a business unicorn. And I had a business unicorn named Emma. And Emma was like, I can't, I'm a little overloaded. Like she was completely burned out by all she was doing. And that was a big distinction, is teamwork, building team, and not just looking for that one business unicorn to support Sistership Circle, but really building more collaborative team. And so that brings me into 2023 of really focusing on team and collaboration and relationships and partnership and um, and really focusing on what people are really good at around me and utilizing or not utilizing, but like really highlighting people's gifts. And that's a big part of the direction actually we're going in Sistership Circle, is a little bit less towards doing it the Sistership Circle way and really bringing forth like your truth and your essence into your circles and taking women in that direction. So yeah, those are my big highlight themes for the year. And so now I'm looking at 2023 as the year of the magician, of being the space of joy, relationships, really attuning to that frequency that is magnetic and calling in. That's very much related to the magician and the word generosity. And so, in order for me to be in those places of joy and magic and generosity, I got to have my sacred start. I have to set those boundaries to feed my own heart, to touch this part of my like connecting in with my own heart. That's when I'm in that generous place. So I'm looking forward to that, and really mapping out and putting these dates into the calendar of reviewing my intentions and weaving my intentions together, with this year in review and the creation of 2023 with my new moon statements and stepping into my next level of leadership. So I would love for you to share anything that has come up for you with this process. And if you end up doing it and you want to share one of your themes, if you want to share your 2023 word or vision with me, I'd love to hear that. And then we have an activation call this week, January 5th, where I'll be taking you through a visioning ritual, which it's my favorite. Like I do it at least twice a year. It's so potent and powerful, and really getting laser clear. It's like there's so much, and we could get into this like overwhelm of like all the things you want to do, but it was like, really, what's the drishti point? The drishti point is that North Star, that focus. And that's what we'll be doing on Thursday, January 5th. So come join us, and we'll see you soon.
If you just listened to this show, I'd love for you to leave the Brave Woman podcast an honest review. Reviews help podcasts like this one grow, making it more possible for me to devote my time, energy, and money to its production. If you take a screenshot of your review and email it to support@sistershipcircle.com, we'll send you one of our archetype activations as a thank you gift. If you like this show and have been watching for a while, or even this is the first one, I have an ask of you. This feels vulnerable, but I know I need to model the brave woman every day in as many ways as I can. Here's my ask. This podcast costs a lot of time, money, and energy to produce it. And in order for it to be sustainable over the long term, I need financial sponsorship. A simple way for you to support is by buying me a cup of coffee. Cute, huh? If everyone who listened bought me a cup of coffee for $1, $3, $5, it would cover the cost of production. So you can do this at sistershipscircle.com/coffee. Thank you so much for your love and support.
Up next, do you know your wealth archetype? You're about to find out in the next episode with Tara Grace as we dive into the wealth frequency for feminine leadership and how you can release old money stories to receive the divine compensation you're truly worthy of.